Hello. I am a Buckeye, and have you ever met a Buckeye that wasn't proud of it? I dare you, you know? Whether we should be or not is not the issue. But, you know, last time I checked, Mike, we are bowl eligible. Penn State is too, aren't they? Right? Yeah. Anyway, I have spent most of my life talking to farmers about how to have better calves and heifers. And what I have found out is that looking at it from the farmer perspective is different. It has to be doable. It has to be manageable. And I need to bring it down to stuff that my boss, who is not a calf guy at all, he's a genetics guy, that he can understand it. And so, for example, what we've learned from Penn State and Wisconsin and that college up north, what's that called? Can't remember. What we've learned, more than anything, bottom line it, healthy calves have a good chance of making good cows. Sick calves don't, right? Isn't that the bottom line here? And so if there's something that I can do to have healthy calves, I should do it. It's going to pay off. And so having seen at the ADSA meeting the information that Corwin put up there, then I decided I was going to test this on at ST. And for you to know how this works, then I decided I'm really proud of my company, and so I decided I wanted to be able to show you what we do at the Ohio Heifer Center, besides taking cute pictures. The history of the Ohio Heifer Center is we purchased it in 2010. The original purpose that it used to be the Ohio Beef Lot. It was a long time ago. Original purpose was to export bred heifers to places like Turkey and Romania and Russia, and current purpose is research and development. We're there to produce data and essentially the next crop of females, of uteruses. That's our job. So I need to keep it simple so that I know how to apply what I learn. And so this is an aerial view, and there in barn 1, that's where all of our flushing, superovulation happens, and also all of our recipients are housed in there. None of us, the rest of us, are allowed in there at all, because what happens in barn 1 stays in barn 1. So we have 300 animals in the flushing area all the time, and we have 600 animals in the recipient area. We produce almost no pregnancies from semen anymore. This is all embryo stuff because we like to have control. And this is the crew that works in there, and this is how the barn looks. All of it's fence line feeding and so on. And there are some positives and negatives to this, and I would love to see some research on the negative effects on the next generation for heifers that are in heat stress and how far back it goes. So I don't know where you can get funding for that, Corwin, but good luck on it. Great, I'd love to see it. And then in barn 2, so we create the pregnancies in barn 1. Barn 2, then that's where the shortbreds are. And then barn 3 is where longbred are. And then they come around from the west side to the east, and that's where the close-ups and the maternity area are. And we keep the newborns in a separated area of the barn for the first 3 days. So as far as the number of rations that we have, I hadn't counted for a while. It's 12. And so not many places have the privilege of doing that. And so as far as the benchmarks and things like that, then we do a lot of 2.2 to 2.4 rates of gain early on before they're bred, and we can raise them really cheap after that. So if you want to talk about the numbers, I'd be pleased to tell you. I'm supposed to know the numbers anyway. The animals go then, they're born here, go to the end of the maternity barn, and then they go over here to the crib barns, and we keep them there just long enough so that we can go and put them into there's the crib barn, sorry. And then we have actually a second auto barn up here now, but 2 auto barns up here, auto feeder barns. And the reason for the auto feeder barns is because we want the data. What is their actual milk consumption? What can we learn about their health status by changes in how aggressively they eat, different things like that. So the farm is all about data. I'm telling you all this stuff to set up what I'm going to talk about in a little bit. That's what it looks like in the winter. We have powder as a backup. We have pasteurized milk, no waste milk, but pasteurized milk that we feed ad lib through the first usually 55 days, and then we start to trail off. And then barns 8 and 9 is where we try to move them from, they're weaned there in those auto feeder barns. And then in barns 8 and 9, that's where we try to get them on forage, TMR. And that's a picture of it there. And this is one of the most important barns because transition is one of the hardest things to do, right? Respiratory, stuff like that. But we do start them on the TMR before they get out of there. And then in barn 4, this is a primary place of our data. We use GrowSafe nodes here. Those are on weigh cells. And we use the RFIDs to be able to identify which animal is eating, so we can find out how aggressively they eat, whether they're first in line or last in line, how many ounces they eat at a time, and things like that. And so our marketing people, you can tell that, feed guys don't like marketing people. We have some disdain for them. They've decided to call this eco-feed. And the reason that matters is because when we first started doing this, we had 2 full sisters, flush sisters, that were born within hours of each other, and they went through the whole farm in the same pens with the same feed in the same environment, including the same social environment, and they both gained just over 1.9 pounds per head per day. Okay, pretty good, right? Because they go into this barn 4 when they're about 450 pounds, and they come out at about 850 ready to breed. So all of that was expected, but one of these 2 full sisters ate 40% less than the other. 40%. We were astounded. That is not usual. That's out on the edge, but we found lots more variation than we ever dreamt. And so does that matter? Which of those 2 animals would you want to feed if you own dairy cattle? If you're selling feed, which of those 2 do you want to? No. But this is huge. And I'll give you some more data here, and we do have a lot of numbers, so I can be pretty confident of this. If you noticed, I don't have any letters behind my name, and so I generalize and throw information around and stuff like that without having data sometimes, like a farmer, right? Yeah. So in that trial barn, then we have 600 heifers at a time on trial, and right now, actually, this is about 8,000. I should have updated this. RFID, real-time feed consumption, time at the bunk, everything. So this is fun data. One of the questions for this is, you're going to see we now have a robot barn because we want data, right? And so what would you say, all you people with stuff behind your names, how predictive is what happens in barn 4 where we're measuring every ounce they eat? How predictive from that efficiency will show up in how they milk? Any thoughts? Closely related? Anybody else? Not as related as we thought. Okay? Now we're still working on that. It is related, but not as closely related as we thought. So we have more data to gather in order to see what it actually looks like. But it's robots, and have you ever seen the amount of data that robots actually collect? You can get lost. You could spend weeks and weeks and end up not having learned anything. So I don't want to do that. I'm just a feed guy. So there's a picture of the robot barn as it was being put together. We've now been running it for about 6 months, and we've made a lot of mistakes, and we're getting better at it. But this is good stuff. It's a Lely, of course, but a question for you. What makes this is thrown around, right? High-performing heifer. What's that mean? And I'm not asking just so I can answer. I would like you to answer, please. What's a high-performing animal? Nobody wants chickens. High feed efficiency. Well, he knows what a teacher's. High feed efficiency, yes. That certainly is a possibility. What else? Yeah. Fills her genetic potential. In what way? Every way is what. Yeah. So, if she's fulfilling her genetic potential, but she's only in the herd for 2.4 lactations, is she a profitable animal? No. Why? Takes 2.6 to 2.8 lactations to pay for them. So you lost money on her unless, of course, she's worth $1,000 for her meat, like that happened 5 years ago or whenever that was. But that's not what we're in the business for. We're in the business for milk. So how about longevity? Is that part of high performing? Yes. High feed capacity. We've bred them so that they just eat more so we get more milk. Does that actually make more money? So I get to do some lectures over at OSU, and so I ask those students at times, what does a dairy farmer really want? And they almost always say milk. No, they want to be doing it again next year. They want to make money. If they aren't making money, they're not doing anything. So what they want is money. So that's how we should answer what's a high-performing heifer. Feed efficient? Absolutely. For some farms, still alive. Yeah? Not just still alive, but as we heard before, and Penn State's been the leader on this, is an animal that's gotten 2 treatments for respiratory is 2.5 times more likely to leave the herd before 60 days in milk. Right? Judd Heinrichs. That's really good stuff. We need to know that stuff. Does it change her epigenetically? Absolutely. She's no longer a high-performing heifer, period. So, top 3 costs on a dairy, we've heard about that. Feed, replacements, and labor. And so we talk about feed and labor a lot. The efficiency of labor on a big place, right? Don't we talk about that? How many turns do they get in their parlor? And so on. We don't very often talk about the replacements. So the cost of raising a heifer, and this, you go to different universities, you get different numbers. You can read this, as we said before, but when you see a spread like this, 35 cents per head per day variation, that means opportunity. Is it going to take you 2 lactations to pay for her, or is it going to take 2.8 lactations to pay for her? And in this variation, do you want a heifer raised by a custom raiser that did it for 83 cents? Or 84 cents? Not sure. Longevity might become an issue if they raise them too cheap. Also, it ends up that if they aren't big enough when they calve the first time, then there's a lot more cost to milk in the first lactation than we had originally thought. Just read that one. But big differences in feed conversion. We're used to looking at the ratios in groups, but not individuals. And the individuals are actually what matter here, because how are you going to do your mating? What actually is the bottom third that you're going to breed to beef? Yeah, I already told you about the trial area example of 40% less feed. Just astounding. So we have a lot of guys with stuff behind their name, and some of them don't know anything about cows, nothing. But boy, are they good with statistics. And that's what genetics is, right? Statistics. And it ends up that we breed for milk yield, fat percentage, protein yield, all of that stuff that is, the heritability is 0.2. And it ends up that the efficiency in the growth stage actually is higher than that, 0.21. We can breed for this. At our estimate, we can make between 4.5% and 5% difference in feed efficiency in one generation. So this is going to change the market, for sure. And one of the reasons it's going to change the market is because our society is going to demand that it change. In other words, they think we have too big a carbon footprint, even though we have far less carbon footprint per gallon of milk than we've ever had before, far less. They still think we can do better. And we can with this efficiency. So we call it eco-feed, and it's heritable. So this leads me to, Corwin, the stuff that you guys have done. Total number of calves that we looked at after we started this. I started feeding Reassure rumen protected choline in August a year ago. And then we kept track of 1,281 calves. Total calves with total protein recorded is 1,228. Don't know why we didn't get the blood or spin or what from those others that we lack. But that's a pretty good number there, right? And so we test the colostrum. We won't feed anything at this point below a 24. And, well, I have more data here that have TP and didn't receive colostrum replacer. So we just wanted to look at what the effect of colostrum was, right? And so that's 1,208. Total calves with TP of 5.5 or under, or failure, 3.73%. Is that okay? It's exceptional. It's exceptional. And so we've raised our standard that we consider it a failure if it's below 6, and that's 9.7, 9.8. So we're doing pretty good. We've done a lot of good things in the last 3 years to have better management on the farm. Like calves get their colostrum within an hour of birth and different things like that. It takes a coordination that sometimes is hard to accomplish. Average time until first colostrum as it was recorded. Do those guys ever lie, do you think? Nah. But an hour and 23 minutes, range of time 1 minute, I wanted to see that, you know, 24 hours. So average by month, you can see what we're doing. We were doing pretty good in June and July and August, but look at this 3-point swing, and it has stayed there ever since. And the only difference that we know of, because we feed almost entirely corn silage or straw, then the only thing that I could see that was different is the feeding of Reassure, rumen protected choline. And so with this, I didn't tell anybody on the farm except my boss that we were doing this, because you know it can change, biases can change people's behavior to accomplish what they want to see, right? So nobody knew anything about this, and so our vet came to me and said, "Bob, what's going on? These are better than they've ever been." That's pretty cool. I made sure my boss knew about that too. It still wasn't a raise. Health outcomes, which we had a question about here before. Death loss decreased by 40%. 40%. That's amazing. Treatment of respiratory went down by 72%. Do those things matter? What makes for a good cow? A sick calf? No. It's getting this stuff right. And yeah, here we go. They've seen this before. This is the one that really caught my attention, that the efficiency of absorption is so different here. Just amazing. How many things could you do as a nutritionist that can have that kind of result? Measurable, repeatable, dependable. Almost nothing. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm an old guy, been doing this for a while, and there's a lot of stuff you try hoping that it's going to help, right? And sometimes you know if it did or didn't. Well, this stuff I know it did. It made a difference. And so precision release choline. So I am a believer in Reassure. This is, to me, a no-brainer. So what's a high-performing heifer? A profitable heifer. We have to make money at this. We need to not be shy when we talk about it. This is about surviving another year, because milk prices aren't going to be 20 bucks that long. Yeah. As an aside, it is almost time to be done. As an aside, then, to give a story that Mike said, in Ashland County, Ohio, there was one of these, I call them fluffy tail fans, you know, that show cattle and want to sell breeding stock. And so I was there one day, and the price of milk was down, and he said, "Bob, we got to do something about this. Cash flow is a problem." And so he added cows, right? And so then the price of milk went up, and he said, "Bob, we got to find a way of taking advantage of this." So he added cows, right? We had bunk space for 120, and we had 196 animals there. Gee, anyway, there's a lot more to that story, but I'm not going to go there. If she is not feed efficient, she isn't profitable. Do you agree? Okay. So, as I said, our marketers want to call this eco-feed, and a measure of how good an animal performs in converting each unit of feed to growth, and we're working on milk. We think we know what the milk thing is, and Mike, it is connected, but it's not highly correlated. There's some differences. Now, one of the things I've got a question for our researchers is, I imagine it is differently correlated for a fresh animal than 150 days or late. So there's different hormones involved, so I don't know. We're going to find out more. So, questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Have you looked at the bull side of it and this feed efficiency? You got a lot of Heifers there.
We do.
So have you looked at the siders? Are some sidering more efficient animals than other siders?
They are. We're following all of that, and so we actually have an index for efficiency from the bulls for what their offspring will do in the heifer growth stage. And the way we know that it's not as correlated is those really efficient heifers, while they're growing, are not the most efficient that we have in the robot barn. They're not. So just how much of a difference is there, we're not ready to say. But yeah, different bull lines are really different from each other. Yeah. Yes?
What were your baseline death losses and respiratory problems? Because you showed the percentage increase.
They were way too high, and my boss doesn't want to say.
Okay.
Any other questions? And I'm really glad I don't manage the calves. Yeah. So yeah.
Pretty as bad as Florida's, but. So what you showed there, the total protein in serum, that you got that increase there.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard, and I don't have data to back this up, that oftentimes you get to the winter, now those numbers will actually take a hit.
Mm-hmm.
You actually show the opposite, that you're going up there. From your historical data, you see that actually when you look at the winter numbers, that they're lower, and you have a difference there?
No. We did not change at all in the winter. We did see a dip in spring, in April, May, and part of June. And so what I can say is, and I know this for a long time, what we do as nutritionists doesn't matter near as much, not even close to as much as what happens on the farm. We had a changeover in personnel on the farm, and that caused the dip. Once we figured that out, we got it right back to where it was before. And we had some liars on board, so yeah. So we didn't see that change at all. Good question. Yes?
Did you measure colostrum quantity, and did you see any differences in colostrum quantity?
We did not see, we saw differences in colostrum quantity at different times. It goes up and down significantly. And so I did an experiment to see if, the percent protein that we're feeding or something like that, or energy density might change that. None of those things changed it at all. When I make those changes, I don't tell anybody on the farm. I just look at the data bank. So it looks to me as if quantity is independent of about anything I can do. And I don't, I'd love to know how to have good quantity. Yeah. Yes?
Is your robot data just taking the first 60 days, or are you taking them through full lactation of the robot?
At first, we were taking them just for 60 days, but now we are running about 70% heifers, first calf heifers, but we want to see what happens in further lactations. There are some of the animals that we decide to sell pretty quickly. So by 45 days, we've made that decision. Are they worthy of sticking around longer? Do we want to know more about them? Or do we want to sell them to somebody in New York? Yeah, that was fun, right? Yep. You know how you can tell somebody's from Cornell? Is anybody here from Cornell? No? You know how you can tell? You don't have to, they tell you. Yeah? Okay, I think we're done. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you.